Americans talk about sex and sexuality all the time. I mentioned it earlier when I talked about what we see in the media, on TV, and in other areas. The conservative media criticize culture's overemphasis on sex. They claim that sexual themes dominate culture in the media, and they claim that the government allows too free an expression of sexuality. Liberals, on the other hand, believe that culture is sexually repressive and puritanical. They use as examples the establishment of abstinence until marriage, sex education in schools, restrictions on reproductive rights, and resistance to the legalization of domestic partnerships or gay marriage. Others claim that there are mixed messages about sexuality. It's used on one hand to market and sell nearly everything, while most schools can't teach it in a comprehensive, forthright manner. Government, society, and other ethical systems influence sexuality in many ways, both positively, negatively, and in an ambiguous way. We are sexual beings from conception on, and our sexuality evolves and grows despite official sanctions or restrictions. We learn about sexuality whether we learn about it in school or from somewhere else, and it's not whether we learn, but the quality of that learning that's important. Social conflicts on issues like sex education and abstinence result mainly from differences in people's ethical beliefs. We have to ask ourselves where these beliefs come from. People's sense of right and wrong in sex, as in other areas, derives from many sources throughout their lives. They can derive from religious teachings, secular humanist ideas, upbringing, past sexual interactions, reasoned thought, and even from ethical instincts that we inherit from our evolutionary past. There are both sex-positive and sex-negative ethical traditions. Sex-negative traditions label many and perhaps all sexual behaviors as wrong. Early Christianity was dominated by sex-negative ideas. Here we see a picture of St. Augustine of Hippo, who believed that abstention from sexual activity was the only true virtuous state. Devices were invented to prevent wet dreams, and these are three of them that you see here. This one, the one labeled A, would ring a bell if someone experienced an erection overnight. And so this would wake them up and presumably scare them so much that their erection would go away. The object labeled B on this has obvious properties that would discourage an erection and subsequent wet dreams, as would item C. John Ashcroft, who was the Attorney General under George W. Bush, was offended by the statues that you see in the picture at the top, largely because the one on the left with the naked breast would appear just over his head when he was making press conferences, and this offended his sensibilities, and consequently he spent $5,000 to get the curtain that you see on the lower picture that covered the statues up. By the way, the statues were of justice and liberty. And eventually he got such bad press over this that he removed the curtain, and it was no longer left there. And subsequent attorneys general, to my knowledge, don't use the larger curtain. You also see in artwork from the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance a desire to cover over the male and female genitals, usually with fig leaves that would seemingly appear out of nowhere by some contrivance. I'm still trying to figure out how on the two statues on the right a fig leaf would stay there under normal circumstances. I don't see anything tying it there, but you get the picture. Now, among the most sex-positive traditions, on the other hand, are those of some Pacific islands, specifically the Mangaya in the Cook Islands. Mangayan girls and boys are given instruction in sexual techniques, and they're encouraged to put what they learn into practice, even in the form of casual liaisons. In our own society, Dr. Ruth is a proponent of sex-positive ideas. Occasionally you see buttons that are sex-positive. And in the statue of Michelangelo that visited the United States, you see a sex-positive idea where the male genitals are depicted without the covering of a fig leaf. However, when Michelangelo's David visited the United States, he did have some difficulties. He went to too many fast food restaurants, and you can see the result of that. Now, sexual ethics that we're talking about may be founded on a number of things. For instance, they may be founded on the basis of religious or other authorities. For instance, the feeling by some who are very religious that homosexuality is against God's law. They may derive from agreed upon principles like honesty. For instance, that you should tell your partner if you are suffering from herpes, rather than risk infecting them at certain times. These ethics may also arise from an analysis of the consequences of our actions. For instance, if teens have sex, we will all have to support the unwanted babies that might result. Because of these varied modes of ethical thought, people, including professional ethicists, have diverging views on what is right and wrong, and sexual ethics may in fact change over time. Bernadette Bruton of Brandeis University leads a group that's concerned with the reworking of Jewish and Christian sexual ethics in the light of feminist theory. In the New Testament, St. Paul roundly condemned sex between women in his epistle to the Romans. But according to Bruton, Paul's condemnation was rooted in his belief in the importance of distinct social roles for men and women, with women in the subordinate position. And this distinction was threatened by lesbian relationships. Feminism and other social forces have brought historical justification for strict gender roles into question. So Paul's denunciation of female homosexuality may have lost some of its original moral relevance to contemporary society.